Boys and girls, welcome back to another Babble video. Talking about some of my favorite drummers, favorite albums, topics as such today. And lately it's really cool to see this particular drummer. He, has always kind of lived in secret and, outside of little glimpses that you could get through the odd interview he would give. It was always very difficult to find, things about this drummer, and even to kind of see live performance of him was quite a rarity for a very long time. It's kind of strange to think in today's day and age with how much exposure everyone has, but for years and years and years, there was only just a handful of videos of this drummer kind of circulating around, and so studying him and it was kind of difficult, and probably a lot of drummers can relate. It's like you have different ways of learning, and some people learn by watching, some people learn by listening. Early on, I didn't have a lot of video exposure or video things to pull from, so I spent a lot of time just listening and figuring parts out by ear and to the best of my ability. Sometimes I would get drum tablature and I would read the notation and kind of figure things out that way too. But for the most part, it was always by ear. And this bastard made that a very difficult task for me, but one that in hindsight served me well. And the drummer is Carey, and you probably know him best from Tool. And it's in the world of drumming, he needs no introduction. He's one of the drumming giants of modern day standards, and Tool is a interesting band. Honestly, there's songs that I like from Tool, but it's never been. I appreciate all the things about them, but I've never been a diehard Tool fan. But saying that, I've always appreciated Carey's importance to that band and what he brings. And I think if you try to imagine Tool without him, I don't think you even, I don't think you have the band. I don't think you have the magic. I don't think you have all these elements that he brings to the band. The power, the muscularity, the creative playing, the dynamics, just the kind of like the electronics and the ambience and all these things. He's such a, he's definitely not underrated, but just, an immense talent behind the kit. My first exposure to listening to Carey probably was around the same time as everyone else. Tool had, the song Sober. That was kind of a radio and a television, music television, probably came out of nowhere at the time. I don't really know if that was like a happy accident or whatever you want to call it, that song kind of took off. Right time in alternative music, and the right band and timing is everything. And I think it helped them just kind of like reach to these kind of different places. The video was amazing as well. Adam Jones, the guitar player, I think he had a lot to do with the look and those early things of the band, with his experience in working in motion pictures and stop motion and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a very compelling music video to see. But then the music and the drumming, the song was catchy, but there was something else going on in the drumming, and it was like these little just intricate things that he was adding. And I really grasped early on into the dynamics of Carey's playing. He just had this ability to go from the pianissimo, these very quiet passages, all the way up to just the loudest of loud, and it was kind of eye-opening because it added such drama to the music, and these abilities to control the experience through just his volume level and what he was choosing to play. He had a lot of bell accents and unconventional kind of rhythmic sounds that were in there as well. And if you know anything about Danny Carey, he's obviously immensely involved in the programming and the synth world and electronics and early electronics. He's hugely influenced himself by Carl Palmer and Bill Bruford and these like early pioneers of hybrid electronic drumming. And you can see that if you look back at the influence, you can see Danny Carey's influence pretty clearly in those sort of things. Sober comes out a couple years later. They play Lollapalooza. The band is just kind of on a trajectory going up, and popular, but not like a household name yet. And then the Enema record comes out, and then Tool is on a different stratosphere, all over the radio. Stinkfist, I believe, was the first single that was off of that album, and that's still to this day, as a kind of out there as a band as Tool is. It's like to have a song like Stinkfist or Sober that are radio friendly and can be out there to get exposed to the masses is pretty cool. And even in a song like Stinkfist, which I just did a cover of, and I never play the songs exactly the same. It's just not in me. It's just not good enough. But I do my best, and so doing that cover just kind of reminded me of like all the little things that are in there. Some things I don't even know what he's doing. It's like if he's playing it on a program pad or if he's playing it on bells or so. Trying to replicate these things is a fairly daunting task, and anyone that can replicate those songs exactly, it's kudos to you, because you've got a lot more patience than me when it comes to that. So at that time when Enema comes out, also I'm reading Modern Drummer magazine, and he happened to do an article or an interview in the magazine, and that was kind of the first long form sit down thing I had ever seen or heard from Danny. I had always seen him, advertising and for Peisty and for Sonar drums or True Line drumsticks. Like I'd see his name associated with these advertisements, but never really kind of talking about what his approach was for everything. And then I think it would have been 1996 at some point. I have the magazine there, but he starts talking about like all of the behind the scenes of Tool and how he's like conjuring magic and like pulling like things from the like the ether. Like he's just going off in these wild directions, and it was just like, wow, so this guy is into like numerology and like tying numbers into like feelings and like like just crazy things. Like I was 15 years old at that time, and just like these concepts were unbeknownst to me, and it really kind of got me thinking. I always had an interest in math and numbers, and I was always fairly good at it, and so it kind of got me thinking like in original projects. It's like, yeah, you can do these sequences with numbers, and it got me thinking about like it kind of opened my eyes to polyrhythms. I had clearly heard some polyrhythms, on some of the early Genesis stuff I had listened to, even like Peter Gabriel's solo albums, like, some of those things have some very subtle polyrhythms that are going on, the odd time signature. Odd time signatures were always kind of a foreign territory for me at that time, because I had grown up listening to mostly straight ahead country music, pop music, rock music, mostly four on the floor. The odd thing that would be in 6/8, or the odd thing that would be in 7/8 even. But getting into these overly complex time signatures where you have long durations of bars, and you're getting into whatever 13/16 or 15/16, and then another bar, like these compound time signatures, and that was all foreign territory for me at that time. And so I just read that article over and over again, trying to kind of digest the concepts that he was talking about. Clearly, he was a very well schooled percussionist, whatever music school he went to, I don't remember, but clearly his background in music is at the highest level, And luckily, he shared a lot of that in some of those early interviews, talked about some of the Western influences that he had, the Western music influence, I should say. Or not Western, Eastern, what am I talking about? So your Indian music and how things operate in different, much different time signatures there, where you have these passages that are 64 bars long before you have a repetition in the patterns. And he mentioned studying hand drumming. I can't remember if at that time he had started studying with a very famous percussionist named Trilok Gurtu. But I believe Trilok's no longer alive. But at that time, he was very famous in India and for his prowess in percussion, and he's insanely talented himself as well. And Danny Carey was exploring at that time, doing more hand percussion and just learning about other rhythms and how to apply them. Constant exploration of rhythm, which was very admirable, and something I kind of, not to the same degree, but something I was interested in myself. I saw that influence later on with numbers and tying things together with another drummer from Mudvayne, Matt McDonough. He talked extensively about sequencing and tying numbers and what the numbers mean, and numbers being universal language. And one means the same thing in Japan as it does in Antarctica, as it does in Brazil, as it does in Kansas City, Missouri. And so how numerology and numbers could be a universal language, and music is also known as a universal language too, and he equated these things together. But back to Danny Carey, we get into Enema record comes out. Huge influence from that. Lots of songs I've pulled off that through the years. Trying my best to play, to be honest. I never quite get there, but I try hard. And then you've got, I don't know why it escapes me right now, but the record that's Lateralis came back to me in the nick of time. Lateralis comes out, and so that's kind of where my digging into Tool and really pulling apart the drum patterns, because you get songs like The Grudge and Ticks and Leeches and stuff like that that's on there, and these are just like drumming, like they're master classes in like composition, and so pulling these things apart and just trying to replicate them and as best as I could. And the sounds he was getting, Danny Carey Tool always had some very interesting thoughts regarding recording. And Joe Barresi, Sylvia Massey was their first on the Undertow album, and then I believe they worked with Joe Barresi quite a bit after that, and then they get into working with the producer escapes my mind right now. He's done quite a few of my favorite albums, but when they started working with this producer, they start exploring a lot more. So I start reading more articles with Danny Carey, and he's talking about Tool flooding the studio with helium so that the overhead microphones pick up cymbal sounds differently, and all these really crazy ideas that you can only do if you have the proper budget to do such things. But the fact that those guys musically kind of had an open canvas and could explore anything and everything they felt like, and they were never at the behest of somebody else, and they were just following their own thing, and they could follow it off a cliff. Occasionally they did, it kind of lost the point on a few things for me. The 10,000 Days record, I couldn't really get that much into, and the newest release, the Fear Inoculum record, obviously there's amazing songs, might be one of the best songs of Tool's entire career, Pneuma, and there's enough people in the drumming community know about this song. It's become one of those famous songs to cover, to show your ability, and rightfully so. The song is a insane challenge to pull off, and you can learn it and replicate it, and that's one thing. But it coming up with it is the thing that really boggles my mind. It's like the the thought process that has to go in, and the rehearsal, and like just like the trying this, trying that. Like it's such a it. You can force drumming in a lot of things just to try to get an idea across, but making it feel natural, especially things that are in odd times and shouldn't feel natural. Everybody knows, like you could feel it, your heart skips a beat, and you feel the unnatural, and the rhythm of just the constant in your body is comfortable, and sometimes odd rhythms can feel forced, and they can feel unnatural, and sometimes that adds to it. But being able to have these time signatures that are so odd, and to have them feel good, that's just an ultimate testament to the way that he brings all of these kind of elements together. And just as the drumming goes, taking influence from him, like the being powerful, like trying to be innovative. His cymbal sounds, I've always been drawn towards that. He's another one of the main reasons. Peisty was always kind of, even though I wasn't playing them, I knew that they were kind of the sounds that were my favorite. And so another big reason to switch. And, I have a lot of the same cymbals that Danny has used through the years, just because of, the cymbal sounds were always so influential and always so crystal clear. And, Tool's music is very drudgy and kind of sludgy and all this stuff. And the cymbals always just kind of sat above that in the mix, and it sounded so just glorious up there. And so yeah, another big influence from him. And just, his double bass work, it's not death metal, it's not crazy intrinsic pattern, but what it does, it adds a huge amount of power. And his placement of those things is such a musical use of double bass versus just a kind of a sticking it in there to be heavy metal sort of thing, if you know what I mean. His very interesting arrangement of drums that he uses now, and the rototoms, and his thoughts about like drum shell composition. We get, as drummers, I think sometimes you can get kind of stuck in certain, I'm definitely guilty of it, where I've been stuck in certain kind of modes, and it's hard to break out of. And as I've gotten older, especially in the last 10 years, I've just kind of let go of a lot of that convention. And, part of me kind of likes, doing the opposite as well. I'm kind of a contrarian in a sense like that, where, if everyone is playing a big a heavy metal double bass kit, and everyone's got that, it's like I would do the opposite, just to be a jerk or whatever, to do something that's unexpected. And I get so tired of these like kind of rules and expectations and things you have to do. And so any kind of musicians or any bands that have the ability to break out of those molds and do what they want are hugely inspirational to me. And Tool definitely does that, but Danny Carey inside of Tool, in that the parameters of that band, he is just an unbelievable talent. And I'm very glad to see that lately, as I've said earlier in the video, now almost 20 minutes ago, it was impossible to see anything with Danny Carey. There was no video of him that was widely available. There may have been something obscure, but nothing where you could actually see him playing. So the fact that he has finally decided to embrace social media, and there's a very heavily watched version of him playing Numa live now, which kind of had almost a viral takeoff a couple years ago. To see his technique and to see him play these things live is like a sight to behold. And he's doing more videos on social media where he's talking about his setup and his thoughts and things like that. And it's refreshing to kind of see these things and hear things he talked about in the Modern Drummer articles 30 years ago that he still carries with him, and still puts into practice today. And yeah, if you've never checked out Tool, I'm sure you've heard Tool, but there is a deeper a deeper kind of catalog than, you know, a couple of the songs that you may have heard on the radio if you haven't been exposed to them too much. You know, the Lateralis album is kind of a high watermark for the band, drumming wise. A song like The Grudge, or, you know, Lateralis itself, Ticks and Leeches. Oh man, there's a single off that album. It's escaping me now, but that album and Enema are kind of like the two, you know, most well-known, probably the most well-regarded albums from them. So those would be my first suggestions to go to check out. But not an easily digestible band in the grand scheme of things. The music is can be out there. It can be a little self-serving, I guess, at times. And I totally am on board with that. It's their music and it should please them first. And if they've decided to have a 4-minute interlude of static electricity going back and forth, then that's their thing. And you know, I'm happy to just be along for the ride with those things. So yeah, check them out. This is the one about Danny Carey from Tool. Cheers.